The left is totally, completely unhinged. Their hatred of this president and his supporters is driving them absolutely crazy. One need look no further than the latest attempt to impeach him. The Giffords March for Our Lives Gun Safety Forum was held in Las Vegas this week, and all manner of ridiculous proposals were floated there. Some of them we all knew about, and then some that were interesting. The FBI released their homicide numbers for 2018, and the facts continue to fly in the face of the emotional arguments that the left keeps making. And a congresswoman claims that Trump is endangering her life, and another one goes full racist. We'll get into all of that and more. I'm Big E, and this is the Liberty Cast. So the left is completely unhinged. They continually engage in this projection where they accuse conservatives of hatred, but they are the ones that hate this president. They hate this president and his supporters more than they love the country. The evidence of that is they've been talking about impeachment since before he took his oath of office, before he was sworn in. And then you look at this whistleblower complaint, and they completely changed the rules specifically to get Donald Trump. The Intelligence Community Inspector General admits to changing the form that whistleblowers use to submit their complaints in response to the one that was submitted against Donald Trump in August. Now, what am I talking about? Margot Cleveland has a great piece in The Federalist about this very topic, and she talks about how before this complaint against the president, whistleblowers from the intelligence community needed to have firsthand knowledge of wrongdoing. On the form, it states, in order to find an urgent concern credible, the ICIG, the Intelligence Community Inspector General, must be in possession of reliable first-hand information. The ICIG cannot transmit information via the ICWPA, the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act, based on an employee's second-hand knowledge of wrongdoing. So that was explicitly, that's a passage right from the form that a whistleblower would fill out in a circumstance like this. But that was changed. That form was changed. And Margot Cleveland goes into why and how and the timeline and things like that. But it boils down to sometime between May and August, and based on some of the other reporting that I've read, it looks like this change was actually made in August, specifically in response to this complaint. And you have to understand, a lot of these government officials are holdovers from the Obama administration. Some of them may even be holdovers from the Bush administration. And they're not necessarily, just because of that, they're not necessarily conservatives. Bush was no conservative. But anyway, getting back to the matter at hand, these people were holdovers from the Obama administration. And everyone from the Obama administration was a complete leftist, and they all hate this president. And there's just no getting around that. And so anytime there is a perceived chance to try and take this man down, they're going to take it.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
And so what wrongdoing or malfeasance was this person reporting? An inappropriate promise to Volodymyr Zelensky? All you have to do is read the transcript to know that that was a lie. There was no threat to withhold aid. That was a lie. Again, all you have to do is read the transcript. And yes, it came out that the president did withhold some aid for a short amount of time. But the Ukrainians, President Zelensky wasn't even aware of it. He found out afterwards, after it had been released, even though it had been held back for a little bit. And the favor that he asks for during this phone conversation was not about Biden or his son. It was about CrowdStrike and what role they might have played in election interference in 2016. Lies. Then they lied about covering up this conversation and storing it on an air-gapped server that you had to have direct access to get it, like they store a lot of sensitive information. That was supposedly unheard of, unprecedented. Well, wait, hold on a second.
Instead of putting it where it normally resides, they hid it on a very highly sensitive, highly compartmented server that very few people in the U.S. government have access to, in order to bury it.
How often did you guys move over conversations onto that kind of a server?
Never moved them over unless they were legitimately, in their contents, classified.
So she's trying to frame it as if the president was trying to bury something. Well, if he was really trying to bury it, would he have gone ahead and released it? Of course not. I suspect that the reason why they put it on that server was to avoid leaks. You remember early on in his presidency, and it's been pretty much a steady stream since then. There are people in his White House that are continuously working against him and leaking this type of information. And they wanted to make sure that if that information were to get out, it was either going to get out from them, or they would have an idea based on who had access to that information, who could have leaked it. And then when it ended up blowing up, rather than have it leak, because he knew that there was nothing incriminating, there was nothing of nothing criminal, nothing treasonous, nothing like that in this conversation, that he would just release it and be done with it. Now, I think releasing it was a bit of a mistake because it could impact his conversations with other leaders down the line. But I understand why he did it. I just think it was a mistake. But did you catch what she said at the end of that? Of course they stored conversations on that server. Of course they did. And she can say until she's blue in the face that the conversations they stored on that server were classified. The Obama administration isn't going to release anything like that. They never did. They were the least transparent administration that I can recall. They did everything they possibly could to cover up everything. And here she is admitting that they stored material on that server. The Obama administration never met a lie they couldn't tell. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't believe that every conversation transcript that was generated and stored on that server was actually classified, actually had classified material in it. I don't believe it for a second. And it makes no difference anyway, because the president can classify anything he wants. He can deem any conversation transcript he wants classified. And there's nothing anyone can do about it, which is why I am 100% confident that there are conversation transcripts on that server from the Obama administration that, based on the standard that the left is putting forth right now, shouldn't be. There's another lie that the leftist media has been perpetrating, and that is that old Shifty Adam Pencil Neck Schiff didn't know about the whistleblower complaint ahead of time. And back in September, he was on Morning Joe and said as much.
We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower. We would like to, but I'm sure the whistleblower has concerns that he has not been advised, as the law requires, by the Inspector General or the Director of National Intelligence, just as to how he is to communicate with Congress. And so the risk for the whistleblower is retaliation. Will the whistleblower be protected under the statute if the offices that are supposed to come to his assistance and provide the mechanism are unwilling to do so? But yes, we would love to talk directly with the whistleblower.
Now, that was on September 17th. The complaint was filed on August 12th, more than a month before that. And the call was on July 25th, less than 3 weeks prior to that. So this whistleblower, quote unquote, whoever he or she is, must have immediately gone to Schiff's office, because there's reporting that aides in Schiff's office advised the complainant on how to proceed. And the New York Slimes is reporting that Schiff and his aides knew the details before it was filed. And it was filed on August 12th. And again, a month later, he's still trying to perpetrate this fraud that he didn't know anything about it, that he didn't know any of the details. Come on. There's no way. Absolutely no way. Adam Schiff is a liar, a fraud, just a total scumbag. This guy and his leftist cronies, they have been trying for 3 years to impeach this man. 3 years. Nothing's worked. Absolutely nothing. And so they're trying to impeach him. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what exactly it is he's supposed to have done, because Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution lays out exactly what is grounds for impeachment. And it is an act of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And I have people on my social media feed all the time talking about how this man has got to go, how he needs to be impeached. And I always say, for what crime exactly? Show me some evidence of an actual crime, and I'll be right there. Impeach him. But they've been at this for 3 years, and they still have nothing. And this latest one, I mean, come on. It doesn't get any flimsier than this. And I had somebody tell me that this call with the Ukrainian president was basically the straw that breaks the camel's back. I'm like, what? Come on. Give me some solid evidence, proof, even probable cause. And the stuff that they've been throwing at the president doesn't even rise to that level. They're saying that the phone call between Trump and Zelensky amounted to some quid pro quo. You do this for me and I'll do this for you. But even if you have just a rudimentary grasp of the English language and reading comprehension skills, you can see that that is completely false. So if you believe that anything in that conversation rose to the level of impeachable, you need to read the Constitution and then cite for the rest of the class where the pressure was, where the promise was, where the bribe was. Because for the life of me, I can't find it. Because based on my reading of it, he asked Zelensky to look into CrowdStrike and whatever hand they may have had in election meddling in 2016. He didn't ask him to do that and in return for anything else. Nothing like that. So I fail to see where the quid pro quo is. Now, if you want to talk about some real quid pro quo, there's Joe Biden. And the president did not ask Zelensky to look into him, did not ask him to open an investigation. It's just not true. But, and I played the audio of Biden admitting to basically bribing Poroshenko and telling him to fire the prosecutor or else he won't get the money. That's quid pro quo, okay? So we've already established that Joe Biden did that. Now, according to Victor Shokin, who was the prosecutor that got fired, Biden's pressure against Poroshenko was responsible for getting him fired. Shokin said that then Ukrainian President Poroshenko told him not to investigate Burisma because it was not in the best interest of Joe or Hunter Biden. Oh, what's that? That sounds like evidence. At least a lot closer to evidence than anything they have on President Trump. Anything.
But wait, there's more.
Not only that, but Rudy Giuliani met with Shokin, and according to notes that he took during the meeting, quote, Mr. Shokin was called into Mr. Poroshenko's office and told that the investigation into Burisma and the managing director where Hunter Biden is on the board has caused Joe Biden to hold up $1 billion in U.S. aid to Ukraine. End quote. You want quid pro quo? Well, there it is. I didn't want to spend this much time on this particular topic, but it's been out there so much. It's been dominating the news, and there's a lot of material to sift through with this thing. So I wanted to cover it, and there's a little more that I want to talk about, and we will get back to that after this quick break. So on this same subject, earlier this week, there were a number of text messages that were released. And the House Foreign Affairs, Oversight, and Select Committee on Intelligence all decided to release more of them because they claimed that the ones that had been released were released out of context. I don't know exactly what was released prior to that. I have the copies of the text that were released by these three committees. The cover letter that they submitted or that they released with these texts is total bullshit. Quote, "We have all now seen the summary of the call in which President Trump repeatedly urged the Ukrainian president to launch an investigation into former Vice President Joe Biden." What? He didn't repeatedly ask him anything of the sort. He didn't repeatedly ask him anything. So that was BS point number one. Here's BS point number two. Again, from the cover letter. Earlier today, select portions of these texts were leaked to the press out of context. In order to help correct the public record, we are now providing an attachment with more complete excerpts from the exchanges. Who wrote this? Complete excerpts? That's an oxymoron. Excerpts by definition are incomplete. I mean, just unbelievable. Now, the texts that were released were between three people. Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, Kurt Volker, a special envoy to the Ukraine, and Bill Taylor, who is the ambassador to Ukraine. Now, a lot of these text exchanges have to do with setting up meetings between Rudy Giuliani and someone by the name of Andrei Yermak. And there's a whole lot of that and setting up meetings and complimenting each other on the meetings that they had and lunch and breakfast and all that. Fine. One of the exchanges that I really want to focus on is between Taylor and Sondland. Text from Bill Taylor on September 9th. "As I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign." And then a few hours later, in response, Gordon Sondland says, "Bill, I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quo of any kind. The president is trying to evaluate whether Ukraine is truly going to adopt the transparency and reforms that President Zelensky promised during his campaign. I suggest we stop the back and forth by text. If you still have concerns, I recommend you give Lisa Kenna or S a call to discuss them directly. Thanks." In the intervening time between Taylor's text and Sondland's response, Sondland had a meeting with President Trump. And so some people whose opinions that I really respect and agree with a lot, sometimes I don't, but some people whose opinions I respect are really skeptical about what is really going on here. And you should be. I'm not suggesting that we take everything in these messages at face value. So skeptical is probably not the right word to use. But I think all the other evidence that we have at our disposal right now, I think this pretty much corroborates that in saying that there was no quid pro quo. There was no, I'm withholding this until you do this. Nothing like that. No bribery, nothing. And this is what the leftists in Congress are hanging their hat on for impeachment. Now, if they do go forward with impeachment, And that's still a big if. There hasn't even been a vote. Nancy Pelosi is dragging her feet on it. But if for some reason they do end up taking a vote, they do go forward with it. I think even in the House, a vote to impeach with this so-called evidence would be close. Maybe I'm giving them a little too much credit and a vote to impeach won't be that close at all. But I have to think that AOC and Adam Schiff and a few of the others that are calling for impeachment look like lunatics. And even though there's a bunch of other lefties in there, I would like to think that even though there are a bunch of lefties, that they understand that moving forward with impeachment would be a disaster politically for them. And even though they hate Trump more than they love this country, I don't think they hate Trump more than their own self-interest, than their own political self-interest. I think they will put that above everything. And with that in the calculation, that's why I think it'll be a close vote. Again, getting way, way ahead of ourselves because, like I said, Nancy Pelosi hasn't even brought it up for a vote yet. So this is, even though she said in that press conference it was a formal impeachment inquiry, until they bring it up for a vote, it's not. Until then, it's just a bunch of bloviating gas bags spouting a bunch of nonsense, pandering to their base. That's it. All right, moving on. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So this past week, the leftist candidates in the 2020 disarmament primary, they attended the Gifford's March for Our Lives Gun Safety Forum in Las Vegas. All manner of ridiculousness was floated in this forum. Of course, you had Robert Francis talking about his mandatory compensated confiscation program, and Spartacus and Kamala Harris were on board with that too. You had Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, Hiawatha talking about limiting people to one gun purchase per month. Just ridiculous. And then we have Sleepy Joe. He's talking about a compensated confiscation program as well. And although not mandatory, under his proposal, you could choose not to turn them in, but register them under the NFA. He also wants to repeal the PLCAA, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And he's also on board with smart guns. I mean, how many times do we have to deal with this? Smart guns are a terrible, terrible idea. Spartacus also wants a federal firearms licensing regime. And Julian Castro, he's in favor of microstamping, which is technologically impossible right now. And microstamping, in case you're not aware, they put a microscopic identification on the end of the firing pin so that when the firing pin strikes the primer, it leaves behind an imprint of that microstamp and identifies the gun from which it was fired, so that when the police recover shell casings at a crime scene, they can look at that microstamp and find the gun that it was fired from. Technologically impossible right now. And if the technology were available, it would make firearms prohibitively expensive for anyone. But the doozy of the night has to go to Andrew Yang. I mean, he's on board with all the boilerplate nonsense that every other candidate in the disarmament primary is all about. Confiscation, licensing, registries, repealing the PLCAA, smart, all of it. He's on board with all of it. Limiting to one purchase a month, all of it. But he also had this proposal, which I can't even adequately explain, so I'll just let him do it.
We have to make the will of the people and the source of money the same thing. And the way we do that is by giving every American voter, adult, $100 democracy dollars that you can then give to any candidate or campaign or cause, and then we could flush out the lobbyist money by a factor of 8 to 1. So if I get 10,000 Americans who give me $100 each in this democracy dollars voucher, I get $1 million. And then when the NRA lobbyist or the gun lobby comes along and says, I'm going to give you $100,000 to bury this legislation, you say, I don't care about your $100,000. I'm getting $1 million from the people. That's how we override the stranglehold. We break the stranglehold that the NRA and the gun lobbies have over our laws.
Democracy dollars. I have to admit, that's a new one. I don't even know what to do with that, so let's just keep it moving. But the left is continuously pushing these ridiculous measures that will have no effect. Case in point is the Odessa shooter. That's just more proof that gun control will not work. This was a guy who was diagnosed with a mental illness, prescribed medication for said illness, and one day his mother called the police because she was concerned. He was talking about engaging in an armed standoff with the police. He refused to take his meds. He declared that 911 would bow down before him. And when the cops investigated, they actually took down floor plans. They got floor plans and shared them with SWAT because they were that concerned that this guy was a danger to himself or someone else. And they concluded officially that he was volatile and might hurt someone. This was 8 years ago. None of the proposals the leftists have on the table could have prevented what this guy did. He illegally purchased a rifle that was illegally manufactured for sale. So what new measure do they have that would have prevented it? Not even extreme risk protection orders, because they would have required him to give up his legally owned firearms. But he went out and he bought one illegally. But you know what could have prevented it? Involuntary civil commitment could have prevented it. He could have been in an institution getting the help he clearly needed, instead of out on the street buying illegal weapons. But despite what the left would have us believe, like good little subjects, murders are down and violent crime is down. This week, the FBI released their uniform crime report, and it showed that murder is down significantly. The number of homicides dropped from 15,195 in 2017 to 14,123 in 2018. Of those murders, 10,265 were committed with firearms, out of which handguns were used in 6,603 of them. Rifles were used in 297 homicides. Shotguns were used in 235, and other guns, whatever that means, was 167. So of 14,123 homicides, 297 were committed with a rifle. 2,963 homicides were listed as being committed with a firearm, but the type was not listed. So there could be more than 297 that were committed with rifles, but if you follow the law of averages, if you follow the percentages that we have available, it wasn't that many. Basically, every category of firearm used in murder was down from 2017, including mass shootings. There were 346 people murdered in a mass shooting in 2017 versus 337 in 2018. I know that's not a lot, but it's still fewer. In 2018, there were 1,115 murders committed with blunt objects like clubs and hammers and personal weapons, including hands, fists, feet, etc. And again, 297 with rifles. Even if you double that, let's just double that and say 600, round it up to 600. 600 homicides in 2018 committed with rifles. Out of the 10,265 that were committed with all types of firearms, If reducing gun death was actually the goal, why would you concentrate on confiscating modern sporting rifles in common use that account for a fraction of the number of gun homicides in a given year? If reducing gun violence was really the goal, confiscating those rifles wouldn't even be on the list of actions to take. Anyway, getting back to the actual number for a second and not doubling it, 2.8% of all the homicides committed in 2018 were committed with semi-automatic rifles. That tells me that it has nothing to do with reducing gun deaths. It has nothing to do with reducing violent crime. Nothing of the sort. It has to do with disarming the people so that they are the ones in control with all the power. That's it. All it is a power grab. And when you disarm the people, you turn them into prey. You turn them into victims. You turn them into subjects, which, as I think we've established at this point, is their goal. To highlight the point about being victims, though, Kyler Edmond, he was a 15-year-old boy in Port Charlotte, Florida, and he died defending his sister from a violent intruder. Deputies in Port Charlotte say that the perpetrator broke into the home and Kyler Edmond died protecting his little sister. It was a violent encounter, and he was armed with a knife, and he was able to seriously hurt the intruder, but died in the process. Now, I don't know what his family's position is on the Second Amendment, on guns, and it doesn't matter, frankly. But I bring this up as an example just to illustrate that if this young man had access to a pistol or an AR-15 or a shotgun, if he had access to any of those tools, imagine how different that encounter would have been. And now think about all of the violent encounters that take place in gun-free zones or take place in places where the gun laws are so restrictive that law-abiding citizens can't get one. And think about how many of those people died as a result, or were otherwise seriously injured, or raped, or any other horrible outcomes. Guns level the playing field. Guns make smaller, physically less capable people more capable of defending themselves, more capable of being able to hold their own in a situation that they otherwise would not be able to. The left is determined to take that from us because they want loyal subjects they can control. Now, while you let that sink in, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. And when we get back, we'll hit a couple of quick stories. And then we'll get you out of here with some epic stupidity. Stay tuned. So remember we talked a few weeks back about how San Francisco declared the National Rifle Association a domestic terrorist organization? Well, the NRA filed a lawsuit against San Francisco in federal court. And this week, the mayor, London Breed, and the city attorney, Dennis Herrera, sent a memo to all department heads in the city of San Francisco that the resolution that they passed has no impact. Quote, no department will take steps to assess the relationships between city contractors and the NRA, and no department will take steps to restrict any contractor from doing business with the NRA or to restrict city contracting opportunities for any business that has any relationship with the NRA. So basically what they're doing is they're conceding that the resolution that they passed is not binding and has no force of law behind it. So that begs the question, would they have sent that memo clarifying this, basically telling everyone to ignore the resolution if the NRA had not filed suit? I doubt it, because you know this is how they really feel. and they didn't want to have to deal with settling a lawsuit, so they basically retracted their statement. Cowards. Don't they have better things to do? Don't they have homeless encampments to clean up? Don't they have needles and human waste to clean up? And they're busy wasting their time with this nonsense? Come on. All right, there's a few other things I wanted to get to, but we are running out of time, so let's get into a little Schadenfreude. Now, we haven't talked about her in a while, but crazy Auntie Max is back on the scene.
Well, whatever. He shouldn't be going after anybody. He's the president of the United States of America. He's setting some of us up to be killed. I have death threats constantly. I mean, I can't go to the grocery store anymore by myself. I have to pay for security all the time. I can't move around the country without security.
Well, now, crazy Auntie Max is upset because she can't go anywhere without security. When did President Trump ever call for anyone to harass crazy Auntie Max, or anyone for that matter? Precisely never. But yet there's this.
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
Chickens coming home to roost, maybe? Obviously, I'm not wishing her any harm if she has to pay for security. I hope that security is good and they keep her safe. But I don't feel sorry for her. I wonder if her security is armed. Interesting question. All right, y'all, it's time. Let's go ahead and get you out of here with this week's edition of Chronicles of the
Galactically Stupid!
This week's winner comes to us from Michigan. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you none other than Rashida Tlaib.
You know what? And also, analysts need to be African Americans, not people that are not. Because let me tell you, no, it happens all the time. It's true. Okay. I mean, I think non-African Americans think African Americans all look the same. I've seen it even on the House floor, people calling Elijah Cummings John Lewis and John Lewis Elijah Cummings, and they're totally different people. I'm just saying. Well, I see it all the time, and I love them because they go along with it.
Well, I trust people who are trained.
I know.
Regardless of race, regardless of gender.
Yeah.
It's about the training.
But it does make a huge difference. It does. The analysts.
That's racist.
I give a lot of credit to Detroit Police Chief James Craig, who was the other voice you heard there, where he pushed back and he told her, my people are trained. They know what they're doing. Doesn't matter whether they're black, white, male, female, whatever. And I give him a lot of credit for that. But, oh my goodness. She's there having the technology explained to her that it's not about the color of a person's skin. It's about the measurements between the person's eyes, nostrils, the measurements of their the width of their mouth, chin, jaw. I mean, and then she has the nerve to come out and say that. Not only is she a complete idiot, but she is unbelievably racist. And that's probably the nicest thing that can be said about her. My goodness. There's a lot more I wanted to get to, but unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you all for listening. If you like this episode, please check us out on Spreaker, Spotify, SoundCloud, any of the popular podcast platforms, wherever you like to get your shows. Subscribe to us there, leave a review, let us know what you think. You can also find us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Parlay, at The Liberty Cast on all 4 platforms. And check out the website, thelibertycast.net. You can find, go to the podcast page, you'll find all of the podcasts there, and you'll find links to a lot of the sources that were used for content of the show and other stories that I just think you might find interesting. So check us out. Subscribe, leave a 5-star review, let us know what you think. And until next time, as usual, keep your head on a swivel and stay safe, everybody.